Welcome to The Outlet, an NBA podcast hosted by Nick Fay and Kory Waldron.
On this episode of The Outlet, Kory and I recap Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals between the Los Angeles Lakers and Denver Nuggets. As always, you can catch The Outlet on all streaming platforms. Enjoy the show. All right, Kory. Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals concluded. 126-114. Lakers take the dub. Not a great game. Third quarter, the Lakers kind of turned this one into a blowout. What are your thoughts on this one? How are you feeling? What are you thinking for the series?
The series doesn't begin, I guess, until the Nuggets are down 3-1. So
yeah,
we gotta wait. It kind of was anticipated by me, if I'm being honest. Like the Lakers had some time to rest, and I definitely felt like this was a team that was waiting for this Denver Nuggets team to come in. LeBron looked really good, really aggressive. Obviously, Anthony Davis had a massive game. It just felt like the Lakers were a little bit more engaged. And we talked in the preview, it was really exposed today. I saw you had a tweet about it as well. The Nuggets don't have anyone who can limit Anthony Davis or LeBron James. And we're going to see that majority of this series, and it was a game by the Nuggets in which Jamal Murray, I thought, was really good. I mean, he was pretty efficient throughout. Obviously, Jokic had 5 fouls in the third quarter. That was obviously a problem for them. But the Lakers took care of the basketball. Turnovers were a big discrepancy. I mean, honestly, if the Lakers had hit, their free throws in the first half, this was probably a blowout by halftime. But luckily, the Nuggets were able to hold that to 11-point deficit at halftime. But it was just a lot of Lakers role players stepping up. I thought Rondo was good. What were some of your thoughts?
Yeah, Rondo is really good. Like, playoff Rondo is a real thing. But I want to talk about Anthony Davis, who you talked about having a monster game. Only 32 minutes, 37 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. It felt like he had a million dunks, either on oops or just passes down low. And I didn't even think Jeremy Grant did that bad a job on LeBron. Like, he did as good a job as anybody's really going to do on LeBron James, at least, not being an elite guy like Kawhi or Giannis, like we talked about in the preview. But Anthony Davis just went to work. Like, Nikola Jokic has no chance against him. Paul Millsap has no chance. Mason Plumlee has no chance. It's really on Malone to come up with a scheme for the next game, be it double teams, digs, or whatever it is, to really limit Anthony Davis. Maybe go back to some of that tape. Toronto versus the Lakers, or in the seeding games, we saw Toronto put a really good game plan against AD where he had like 9 points and only 10 shot attempts. They just need to find a way to take him out of the game and force those role players to take more shots, because Danny Green, 3 of 10, 8 points, KCP, 6 of 10. That's a pretty good night. Kyle Kuzma, 5 of 8. I don't know if you anticipate these guys shooting these numbers again too. Danny Green's always going to be sporadic, but like KCP and Rondo had a good shooting night. Maybe you put a little bit more pressure on them, or maybe you force LeBron to shoot a little bit more. They just had no answer for AD, and 15 free throws, 12 of 21, just too efficient and too easy for him. And it didn't even feel like he really needed to like turn it up another level.
Yeah, I mean, it was. He was in the game late too, and again, Grant, I didn't realize he only had 32 minutes.
I know that was crazy, because I saw your tweet as well, and I saw other people complaining, and I was like, maybe Vogel wants to like get him minutes.
Yeah.
But again, AD with all these like little weird injuries across his career, you kind of just want to protect him at all cost.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive game by Davis, and I think you're right in the sense of when you look at the Lakers role players again. I mean, the Lakers shot, as a team, 42% from three. Those guys, Caldwell Pope, Kuzma shooting decently well. You want those guys to shoot, right? I mean, the odds are that in a 7-game series, those guys are going to have 2 games, if not 3 games, where they're not shooting efficiently. It's just kind of how those guys are. They're just streaky guys. And then Denver, outside of Jamal Murray, I don't know where you're going to find at times.
Jokic can't get in foul trouble.
Yeah, right, 100%. If Jokic is in foul trouble, the offense looks really bad outside of Jamal Murray, and that was a big issue for the Nuggets tonight. And then turnovers. We mentioned this about the Celtics after we recapped Game 1 of that series. You got to or Game 2. You got to take care of the basketball. I mean, 16 turnovers. I think I want to say they had 11 at halftime. They actually were a little bit better in the second half. But the Lakers, it felt like we're in transition for majority of this game, just out and running.
They were in transition on made baskets, which is just not acceptable in the postseason, especially in the conference finals. Going to the series we talked about in the preview, force the Lakers to get into a half-court offense. Don't let them get those easy oops, LeBron layups, or whoever it might be. And that was the case. And the Jokic foul trouble, the refs weren't good tonight. There was a lot of ticky-tacky calls. But I think some credit goes to Dwight Howard for getting under his skin. And I was, talking to people on Twitter a little bit about this, and some are like, it's the refs. But I think you still give Dwight credit for being a guy that's annoying. You know what I mean? Just like getting in Jokic's head, coming in those for minutes, especially a guy who didn't play in that Rocket series. He played really, really well, and I didn't anticipate that. And obviously, it was a little bit easier given that Jokic was in foul trouble and couldn't be as aggressive. But still, this is some big minutes for Dwight, and I'm sure Vogel was happy about it.
I mean, we talked a little bit on the preview of will the Lakers go big, and how will they match up against the Nuggets? And obviously, there wasn't a lot of JaVale McGee until garbage time.
Yeah,
and Dwight Howard, I mean, brought energy, right? I mean, he was fired up tonight. I mean, that was a lot of emotion, and not a smiling Dwight Howard emotion, like a locked in, like I'm trying to bully you type of Dwight Howard. Which is really nice to see, as you mentioned. I had another. The technical foul that was on Jamal Murray called was one of the most egregious things I've ever seen on a basketball court. I need to just have that stated. In the middle of a play, obviously he's surrounded by 3 defenders. I thought it was a foul. It looked like he got mobbed. But it's a playoff game, and game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. You have no business calling a technical in that situation. I thought that was, of course, they were taking fouls, but that to me was the worst one of all.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Scott Foster is the type of guy that's going to kind of make his name be known in terms of like what's going on. So, obviously we hope the officiating kind of picks up. But I thought obviously it played a factor. The Lakers shot a ton of free throws in this game. The final number being, what is it? 37. 27 out of 37. Probably would have been in the 40s if, the game was more competitive. And, it does play a part, but I still think that transition defense by Denver was pretty bad. And then also schematically, I felt like in the first half this was the case, in the third quarter as well. Like they weren't really like crunching down hard on AD or the Lakers in the paint. It was almost too easy for the layups, where they were almost kind of giving this like half-ass help defense instead of just like coming in, either committing the hard foul or going straight for the steal and kind of forcing those crazy rotations, because that's what you're going to need to do in this series if you're Denver. You're going to have to play with high energy defensively, because you're going to be forced to double team a lot down low and not give up these points to Anthony Davis in the paint.
100%. And I know we talked a little bit about like Michael Porter Jr. He's got to be better tonight. Like I know he finished with a plus 5, box plus minus, but he's got to be a better offensive weapon for this team. Because like you mentioned, even if Jokic gets in foul trouble again, which you can't afford to happen, Jamal Murray was good. There needs to be offense still, though, from somebody else. Yeah. And the most likely candidate is going to be Michael Porter Jr. I wasn't a huge fan of what I saw from Gary Harris tonight offensively. I'm looking for Porter Jr. to step up.
Yeah, and I think with Harris, when he's not giving you offense, especially given the Lakers don't have great offensive guards, he's not providing you that same impact. You know what I mean? Like in the other series, you're feeling Gary Harris because he can, play defense on Lou Will. He can play defense on Paul George. He can even play defense on Kawhi a little bit. We saw LeBron, I think, get a possession early on against him, and he just straight muscled him to the paint. So it's going to be hard for Harris to have an impact if he's not hitting his shots in the series. Michael Porter Jr., like he's a rookie, and he's more of a less experienced rookie because he didn't even get that playing time in college. He sat an entire year. So it's like his feel for the game just isn't quite there. It's like he sits at the 3-point line a lot instead of cutting to the rim or getting those drives. Some of that's, Denver's offense, but I don't know if there's a ton of answers for Denver to win this series. Going into it, we knew the Lakers were going to be the better team. It's like the Nuggets just almost have to play perfect to an extent. Not like perfect, but they can't afford to make mistakes, be it that transition defense. They can't lose a turnover battle. They can't have their best player get in foul trouble. Like without Jokic on the floor, they don't stand a chance in the series.
Yeah, I mean, then I think they lost their offensive rebounding battle as well. I mean, it was a lot closer than I recall it being at halftime. It was 10-9 in favor of the Lakers.
It felt like Dwight Howard got like every rebound at certain points of the game.
No, it really did. Denver's best case scenario is you force LeBron to shoot, which feels weird to say at this point in LeBron's career, but you want LeBron to be taking more jump shots, and you want the role players to have pressure. I mean, Davis in this series, he's going to eat. I think without question, Davis is going to eat throughout this entire series. But if the role players aren't hitting threes and you're making LeBron shoot more jump shots, that's the best possible outcome for the Nuggets. And again, it feels like that's still a very tough road to navigate in terms of advancing to the finals if you're the Nuggets.
given their defensive limitations in Denver and not having those stoppers for LeBron or Anthony Davis, it's going to be hard to win the series. And like, given that they don't have a lot of elite guys, and I think you saw LeBron maybe search for the switches a little bit more, or as the series progresses, he'll know he can attack Jokic or attack Murray or whoever it might be and continue to kind of get these guys in foul trouble. It's really on, Mike Malone to come up with some really interesting schematic stuff to put pressure on the Lakers offensively and defensively. And then the players just have to turn up the effort. Like, they have to make all the extra plays. They have to make the hustle plays, and they have to stop the transition. Like, if they, some of it's the turnovers, but like we talked about, some of it was off-made baskets. That just can't happen. Like, you can't afford to have those mistakes if you're Denver in this series, especially if you want to win. I don't really know what else there is for them to do.
And this wasn't as impressive as the Miami Heat victory in terms of like assists, but again, the Lakers had 33 assists on 44 made shots.
Yeah, the Lakers look like a championship level team. The Nuggets didn't.
This is, I mean, if you're looking at it from the Lakers' perspective, this is exactly what you wanted and needed to see from this Lakers team in Game 1. Coming off all of the hype of the Nuggets and how they finished off the Clippers and everything that went down in that series, the Lakers answering like this is exactly what you needed. It was a championship statement. I mean, it was literally LeBron, not even aggressive offensively, but getting other guys going, Davis being aggressive. And that's what makes this team dangerous, is when LeBron doesn't have to beat you scoring-wise. When LeBron can play that Magic Johnson type of forward, that's when this Lakers team is arguably at its best.
And when they lock in defensively, like they held the Nuggets at 21 points in the second quarter, 20 points in the third quarter, that's just the type of stuff that's going to win you championships. And they just have so many great, guys that can turn it up defensively. Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard's turned back the clock. LeBron plays defense when he wants to. Danny Green always been a solid defender. KCP has looked really good out there. You're getting good effort from Rondo. I think defensively, too, they deserve a lot of credit. Some of that's Jokic not being on the floor. And there were definitely mistakes on Jamal Murray. I felt that points in the second quarter. He got too many open looks for free instead of, like, having to work for it. But they force guys to take shots that you want taking shots. Like Paul Millsap, 2 of 5. Like, Millsap out there is a guy that, hey, I'm going to let him shoot a ton of threes or try to be aggressive offensively because I know at his age that he really doesn't want to. Gary Harris has been out of groove for, like, the last 2 seasons. Monty Morris isn't a guy that's going to light it up. So other than Murray and Jokic, it's going to be tough for Denver to really crank up the offense. This is really a series where they miss a guy like Will Barton.
100%. I mean, again, and if anyone's listening and anyone's like, well, they played a Clippers team that's got good defense. Don't be fooled. The Clippers defense was not good. This Lakers team,
and the Clippers might even have more talent defensively. They don't have the cohesion that the Lakers have with their unit.
Right, and that's the biggest difference between last series and this series. This Lakers team, for everything it's worth, they didn't load management. They didn't take games off. They played majority of the games for a reason, so they could have this type of unity on the defensive end. And obviously, they know their rotations were really crisp tonight.
And they look well rested, and you see a lot of communication. Well, Jokic got the switch onto Caruso in the paint. AD was over there. Markieff Morris was over there, whoever it might be, ready to help. And I know I was kind of against the Lakers playing 2 bigs in the preview. I could have a better understanding for it now because it provides him so much defensively. Where offensively, if Denver's not going to play well and not give Anthony Davis the respect he deserves, and it's going to be okay for them to have 2 centers on the floor because they'll find other ways to score offensively, especially if the transition buckets are there.
Right, because when you play the 2 centers, it makes life on Jokic that much harder. Yep. And then again, you're still daring guys like Gary Harris, Paul Millsap,
even Grant. Like, Grant's had a good year from 3, but I think at the end of the day, like, you're not gonna, live or die.
Right, you're making those guys be the ones to beat you, and they haven't been the ones to necessarily beat anybody this year. It's been Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic as the driving forces. So, and it's the best case scenario for the Lakers. Put as much pressure on Jokic as possible. I mean, Jokic was clearly frustrated this game.
Yeah.
This was a tough matchup for him because, again, even though he's at this point in time probably the best center in the NBA, if you want to take Joel Embiid, that's fine. But motor-wise, I'd rather have Jokic. I mean, he doesn't take any plays off. He knows who he is.
Unless it's defense.
Right. I mean, defense. It is what it is. He's not going to be world class on that end of the court, but facilitating everything else. And they were really physical with him, I thought, and that's how you kind of get Jokic out of rhythm.
I feel like the foul trouble really got him because I want to say he had 11 points in the first quarter. He was like 5 and 9, had a couple assists out there. He was on triple-double watch. And then getting those fouls in the second quarter, and Dwight Howard, too, taking him out of rhythm, really changed the game. But talking game 2, What are you anticipating in that one?
I mean, from the Lakers, I'm expecting LeBron to be more aggressive.
Yeah.
Because it felt like LeBron was just, obviously taking what the defense gave him, getting a couple transitional dunks. But I feel like game 2 is a game in which, you still want to keep Davis hot. Davis got the hot hand. But I think you could see a lot more LeBron James to solidify that they want to win game 2.
Yeah.
2-0 lead. Again, I know what the Nuggets have done the last 2 series, going up 3-1 and coming back. This Lakers team is a lot better than both teams they just played. And you don't want to, again, go into a 3-1 or a 2-0 hole to a team like this at this point in the comeback. Eventually, your luck's going to run out, right? Eventually, the comeback luck is going to run out. That's just how this goes. So if I'm LeBron, I want to put my foot, again, on the gas pedal and solidify. And then if you're the Nuggets, find some help outside of Jamal Murray. Hopefully, Jokic can stay out of foul trouble. And then some of your role players start hitting some threes.
Yeah, I think LeBron's going to come out aggressive, probably score 25 in the next one, if not more. Just kind of find different ways to attack.
He had, 15 on the game, right? 15, 12?
On like 12 shots, yeah. So nothing too crazy. I think he'll probably get closer to 18 shots in the next game. I think Denver will do a better job. There'll be more three-point attempts for the Lakers, especially in some of those role guys. I think they'll really collapse the paint. At least that's what they probably should do. I think Jokic will stay out of foul trouble. They'll get Michael Porter Jr. involved a little bit earlier in the game, I think, with some plays called for him. Maybe even Gary Harris, just to kind of get some other rhythm and not being so dependent on Murray and Jokic to win the game. And I think energy-wise, you're going to see Denver, I think, fight a little bit harder because, like you said, they realize that like this is probably a different class of team. Where Utah wasn't the team that was supposed to be the whatever seed they were, the 6th seed, because of injuries and not having Bogdanovich and then Gary Harris and Jamal Murray coming in that series getting healthy. That was kind of like an outlier. And last series, Clippers super talented, but they obviously had their chemistry flaws and they really had no communication or leadership, lack playmaking. The Lakers are the full deal. Like Denver understands that, and it's going to be just a whole different type of battle. What are you expecting score-wise in game 2?
I mean, again, the Lakers only won this game by 12. Obviously, a lot of garbage time points from the Nuggets to make this one look a lot closer than it was. Because obviously, us watching the game, the second half took forever because it was over by halfway through the third quarter.
Yeah, it was a snooze fest really in the second half. Like it just wasn't a fun, enjoyable game, especially after what we've
obviously,
seen.
We're coming off the high of what the Eastern Conference Finals has provided us, especially through 2 games. So I would have to say the Lakers win game 2. And if I had to guess, I'd say probably right around the same score, 125 to, let's say, 110.
Yeah, I have the Lakers winning game 2. I kind of wish I picked Lakers in 5 in this series, which I was kind of leaning towards, but I went with a safe pick in Lakers in 6. But
we both said Lakers in 6, right?
Yeah, we both did. Yeah, I wanted to say Lakers in 5, but I was just chickened out. 126, 114 for this game. I'm thinking a little bit lower. I think Denver's going to really look to slow things down, especially in the Lakers like transition buckets. So give me 108, 97 in favor of the Lakers.
I think, and this is why I went high, I just think the Nuggets might be out of gas to it.
Yeah, they could.
I mean, 2 back-to-back comeback game victories in the sense of going 3-1, a lot of gameplay, a lot of extra minutes. I think we could see that finally start to wear on this team, especially again, like we mentioned, the Lakers had time to rest. And I think that's the worst thing that could, for opposing teams, that's the worst thing that could have happened, that LeBron James at this point and Anthony Davis got more time to be in the best possible, conditioning for this series.
Even a guy like Rondo, like he's not the craziest player, but he's up there in age. He's feeling fresher. Dwight Howard's a guy that's, past his prime. So all those guys being fresh definitely helps. And I think they said some type of stat where the Nuggets have played a game every other day since August 17th or that's something absurd. Along those lines.
That's absurd.
So
I can't imagine. My legs hurt when I go running 2 days in a row. I can't imagine having to play basketball every other day. And like that's such high intensity. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a struggle. Kory and I will be back for Game 3 recap of the Eastern Conference Finals tomorrow. Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals on Sunday. As always, you can find us on all streaming platforms as well as YouTube.
Peace out, Knuckleheads.